Overseer Council. The following file describes a Maksur class anomalous entity. This information is protected by Level 5 classification. Dissemination of Maksur class information is strictly forbidden and poses an immediate threat to the SCP Foundation and its interests. Individuals accessing this file must provide Level 5 security credentials and must be inoculated against AZ-109 memetic hazards. Failure to do so will result in immediate carrier Omega memetic termination upon accessing this file. Enter your Access 05 credentials. Processing. Access granted. Welcome to the Overseer communication line, Overseer 1205, Dr. Cool.
Hello, Overseer number 1. It is I, Overseer number 12, Dr. Cool, reporting for duty as requested, sir. It has taken me many months to compile as much information as I can gather on SCP-001 for our yearly debriefing of SCP-001. And since it is my turn as an O5 Council member to debrief the Council itself on this dangerous Maksur class object, I will make sure that everything is in line and professionally made in order. However, I do not wish to keep you waiting, sir. I shall begin the debriefing and my report on SCP-001, aka the Broken God.
Beginning audio file.
Item number SCP-001. Object Class Maksur. Special Containment Procedures. Information on the relevancy of SCP-001 to the related anomalous objects ought to be omitted from the respective objects' documentation. While connections with the Church of the Broken God can remain available, the origins of the items ought to be omitted or obfuscated. The inactive component of SCP-001 is to remain in its current location, and any shipping or diving is forbidden in that area. Civilian discovery of SCP-001 is to be suppressed, and amnesiacs ought to be utilized in order to maintain classification. Persons affiliated with the Church of the Broken God, who make active attempts to seek out the inactive component of SCP-001, ought to be taken into Foundation custody and questioned. Information pertaining to SCP-001, whether physical or digital, is to be confiscated and contained. The inactive component of SCP-001 is expected to remain inanimate. However, should SCP-001 experience spontaneous reanimation, all active Mobile Task Force units at nearby Site 27, Site 44, Site 90, and Site 101 ought to be assigned to active countermeasures. Should this event, currently designated as 001-Hyphothesis event, occur in the modern world, it is believed that current measures of information suppression would be insufficient. It is likely that a 001-Hyphothesis event would result in a SK-class Broken Masquerade scenario, and likely following that, an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. Extant active components of SCP-001 are not to come within 20 kilometers of the inactive component of SCP-001 under any circumstances. Description: SCP-001 is a collection of anomalous objects, formerly a single, massive mechanical entity, assembled by members of the Church of the Broken God in late 1942 near La Paz, Mexico. Items include SCP-217, SCP-1139, and SCP-882, and several internal components of SCP-629. A full list is available here in the documentation down below. Members of the Church combined the various anomalous objects in an effort to restore their deity. Upon activation, SCP-001 reportedly began to integrate metallic objects into itself, while actively seeking out other anomalous objects. SCP-001 and the resulting 001 hypothesis event that took place as a result of its assembly was the cause of significant environmental changes in western Mexico, and required one of the most widespread use of amnesiacs to date. Post-event, the active components of SCP-001 were taken to Foundation sites for containment, while the inactive component of SCP-001 remained on the bottom of the Gulf of California, at approximately 23.807269 longitude and negative 108.418369 latitude.
Accessing addendum files.
Now we will get into the addendum files of each of these SCP readings. Addendum 001.01. Collected information describing SCP-001.
Beginning audio file.
Ferdinand was the first, I think. The first who contacted me after they had found the heart. The way they described it, the fervor that was in their eyes, it captivated me, and I knew then, that they had done it. I went to meet with Anthony and Salvador the weekend after my sister's coronation. When they showed it to me, I was taken aback. It was little more than a pile of gears, pistons, ticking pieces of clockwork, and lubricated metal parts, all dutifully churning, along without a power source. Within it, I saw the heart, just as they described. It spoke to me, not like you and I would speak to each other, but with images, and again feelings, and pain. It was in so much pain. Like the spark that had given it life had made it realize what it was, or what it wasn't, and it desired only to be whole again. Desire is a strong word, perhaps. Not desire more than it was impulse. Something within the creature drove it forwards, towards some unthinking, unflattering end. The creature they presented to me was not like the other artifacts I had found and blessed. This one was different. There was something wrong with it, and I did not know until later what they had done. I begged Salvador to take it back to that beach and undo it. That it was not right, but they would hear nothing of it. It started moving before I left, shaking enough from side to side that it could achieve locomotion. It hobbled over a wrench, and the wrench became part of its body. They said to me, "Our God is unbroken." I never saw them again.
Ending audio file. Beginning audio file.
It didn't use words, or any kind of language. It would make metallic sounds, but at the same time, the images and concepts would come to mind when we were around it. Have you ever felt when you have a thought or an idea, and it's all there, born whole in your mind? You still had to think of the words for it, despite knowing the sentiment before you could finish the sentence? It was like that, but from an alien mind. Truly, the words of the divine.
Ending audio file. Beginning audio file.
There were a few wolves. Wait, you know what those are, right? They're like hunters. They work for the Horizon Initiative. They confronted us near a church in Santa Margarita, wanted us to turn in the stuff that we had collected for the Church of the Broken God. Like the Abrahamic stuff we handed over. We deliberated on whether we should give it to them. Our stance with the High has been a bit shaky, more so in recent memory. While we have been on good terms with the local broken churchgoers, The wolves were more aggressive. We looked over what we had, and while we did, this woman walked up. I don't know where she came from. She dressed like a hippie, thin iron chains for hair, but she seemed distant the whole time. The look in her eyes, her abnormal smile, like she was hardly there. She looked at what we had and said she only wanted this, I don't actually know what it was, a metal box. It whirred and clicked and put out this little beam of light on one end when I picked it up. Felt lighter than I would have thought. I asked why this was important to her, and she said that it'd be easier just to show me than tell. She closed her eyes and bowed her head. She didn't move or speak after that, so I closed my eyes as well. She brought her forehead to mine, but kind of offset. We stood like that for a second. Foi muito estranho, before she moved her chin down, making me jerk down slightly. The world dropped beneath me and I fell. The world dropped beneath me and I fell. Something clicked in my mind. An image of two gears, formerly meshed together, now broken away. I felt the teeth of my spine arch out as I bent over. One step and I clicked along the multidimensional cog that was the planet. It spun around the furnace of the sun, tethered to it by the chain that was gravity, and we hurtled together through an oily cosmos with all the power of an infinitely unwinding spring. Sorry. It was an experience. No, it was not a religious experience, but yeah. She told me to pick the box back up, and it felt a lot heavier than before. I couldn't tell if it actually had more weight, or if it felt more significant. I gave it to her and wouldn't hear anything otherwise from the wolves, or my teammates, or my superior.
Ending audio file. Addendum 001.02. Interview with excommunicated Church of the Broken God priest Father Dolores Randall, dated June 1945. Beginning audio file.
You mentioned the heart earlier. Were you there when they found it?
No, not at all. I was out of the country at the time, working with a new mission in Panama. I only heard about Ezekiel after the fact.
Who was Ezekiel?
One of Bamaru's agents, before he was made leader of the church. Robert would keep a number of them around, these individuals who were in tune with God and could feel its presence, speak to it. Ezekiel had discovered an artifact of some value, and Bamaru took him on afterwards. These agents were the first to experiment with the augmentations as well. As you can imagine, many of them died.
But not Ezekiel.
No, he was very close to Bamaru, and I don't know if he would have risked Ezekiel's well-being. It doesn't matter. Ezekiel didn't need augmentations to speak to God. He was just capable.
So what does Ezekiel have to do with the heart?
You heard Avery tell you that they had a stockpile of artifacts, right? Anything of one of these agents touched, if they felt something, they would have it shipped to La Place with the rest of it. Most of it was worthless, but every now and then they would find something legitimate. The purifier, the one, whatever you call it. One of the agents discovered that near Nepal. They had tendons and ligaments and everything else, but they were all just parts, and they would move on their own, but they didn't do anything together.
What do you mean?
The texts refer to God reassembling itself once the pieces are brought before its heart. All you need to do is feed the heart a limb, and the god will have a limb. But they couldn't find a heart. There were a couple of agents who had claimed to have found one, but they were all the same useless piece of machinery as the rest.
So where does Ezekiel figure into this?
Ezekiel was the one who told Bamaru that if they could not find a heart, maybe they could build one of their own. This, at the time, flew directly in the face of church doctrine. The leadership, if they had known, would have excommunicated him. But it was quickly becoming clear that the project wouldn't or couldn't last through to the summer. I was sent in with my mission to resupply them after Ezekiel had left, and their supplies were nearly exhausted.
Our records indicate that the heart was something they discovered. Is that not true?
Of course it isn't true. You cannot preach to a congregation about God giving parts of himself to you and then turn around and tell them that the most essential part is something you conjured up out of nothing. Worse than nothing, though. The details of what they did to create that heart and make it live were never revealed to me, but you can draw conclusions from evidence. There was a drought that year, and the polio crisis had hit an all-time high. Thousands died. All of natural causes, a freak event, never accurately recorded because of the attention on the war. Dios mío. But who can say?
So you think the two are related then?
I think the timing is too coincidental. And knowing what I know about what that thing became, I think the answer is clear. That was not the heart of God, Agent. That was something altogether different.
Ending audio file. Addendum 001.03. Recovered video transcript. Dated November 1942. Video recovered from the local documentary film crew that was in the area at that time. The shot begins on a destroyed home. The wreckage centered around the garage. Metal fragments and strips of rubber trail down the driveway and onto the asphalt, and go down the street. Pieces of various automobiles are strewn across the street and sidewalk. The trail leads to SCP-001, which is integrating a truck into its chassis. SCP-001 continues to the nearest house, where it begins consuming the gutters. Residents of the area flee the scene, several injured by discarded shards of glass and twisted metal discharged by SCP-001. Lights produced from various parts of SCP-001's body focus on the various prone figures. A section along the undercarriage of SCP-001 alters and drops away from the main body, which continues down the street in search of more resources of material. The ejected subsection continues alterations, forming a vertical pod somewhat resembling a human spine and rib cage. Pod collapses in various areas, the rib-like protrusions extending outwards as the rest of the pod changes into a humanoid form, roughly 3 meters tall. Light is produced from the head, which is focused on a nearby civilian. The metal humanoid picks up the civilian, who appears to be dead, and places it into a small chamber between the humanoid's ribs. The ribs vibrate as the humanoid approaches a second civilian, who is attempting to crawl away. She attempts to struggle as the humanoid lifts her and places her inside its chest cavity. The humanoid turns away from the camera to approach a third civilian, and what appears to be the woman's dismembered hand falls to the floor. A growth on the humanoid's back slowly expands as it continues to gather bodies, the body of the humanoid decreasing in size as it does so. By the 6th consumed body, the growth is larger than the humanoid itself, and is unable to continue bipedal movement. The limbs recede into the body, and the ribs extend to allow it to scuttle onto the roof of a nearby house. It remains in place for 20 minutes. The bulbous exterior cracks and is torn away from within, revealing 3 humanoids. They each appear to be symptomatic of SCP-217 and exhibit physical characteristics of the 6 captured civilians. One, a female with chains extending from its scalp, shakes another, which appears to be dead. The third, a male with the clockwork limbs, examines itself before jumping from the roof, landing on its stomach. It does not appear to be damaged by this, which seems to cause it distress. It then pursues SCP-001, which is consuming another vehicle further down the street. The female humanoid notices the camera crew. It begins to wave, but quickly stops. It looks towards SCP-001 before jumping into the backyard and out of the camera's view. Addendum 001.04. Taped phone conversation with Robert Bumaro, suspected head of the Church of the Broken God. Note: the following is audio from a taped phone conversation between an agent of the Church of the Broken God, name unknown, and Robert Bumaro. The call was recorded in December of 1942, and was collected by Foundation personnel during a raid on a church stronghold in 1966.
Beginning audio file.
Hello? Bless you, Father. Dimitri? No. Oh, of course. Bless you, child. How is the little lord? Stronger every day. We had to move him from the back of our office into a warehouse nearby. He's being fed? As you required. Good. When will you be moving to Penasco? Within the week. We are only waiting for the next train. It may need to be sooner. There was a raid in La Paz 2 weeks ago. 3 of our men have not been accounted for. There is a growing Foundation activity nearby. Father? Father? Tomorrow. Father? Yes. We had expected them to head north, but they come west instead. A minor setback. What about the safe house? There are nearly 100 other artifacts there, and... Minor setback. They don't know where it is, and even if they did, that isn't their priority right now. Their eyes, and the eyes of the rest of the world, are in Europe. As their gaze set off there, they will not realize their accomplishment until they are powerless to stop him. That was, something else I needed to ask you, Father. Yes? Our God is ravenous. We cannot seem to satiate him. The supplies we were given are not. What is the issue? Father, the Lord is eating its own housing. We cannot convince him to stop. He cannot be reasoned with. It's nonsense. The heart of the devout may speak directly to our God. Can you not hear his words when he reaches out to you? Do you not feel the machine moving inside of you? Or do you need more proof other than the living, breathing God before your own eyes? No, Father, it is not that. It is... I will hear nothing of it. For years we have prayed and asked for our God to be unbroken before us, and now he has presented himself. We know that the divine will speak to the heart of the devout. If you're telling me that there are none among you who are devout enough to commune with our Lord, tell me now so you can be replaced. Our faith is strong, Father. Please forgive my insolence. I am only misguided. See to yourself, then. I worry for your faith. Have one of your brothers, one who is stronger than you. Have him speak to the Lord and tell him the necessity for secrecy. Our Lord will understand, no doubt. The unbroken God is a reasonable God. Yes, bless you, Father. Bless you, child.
Ending audio file.
Addendum 001.05 Escalation Report, dated December of 1943. The following is an interview conducted with the Foundation Commander Mark Peterson of Site-74, the director, who prior to the 001-hypothesis event was stationed in Mexico City, was on site with Foundation personnel in La Paz during the event.
Beginning audio file.
Start again from the top. We're recording now.
Alright, the first reports we got about church activity in Mexico was in 41, but it was all pretty minor at the time. We had just finished field operations near the border up north and were preparing to move our assets to Atlanta for deployment to France. We had just gotten our orders to retrieve a series of sensitive objects that they didn't want to get into the hands of the Krauts, and they were going to move our entire division to get it done. Leadership wasn't sure that Roosevelt would make the call to move in enough time for us to blend in with the Americans, so we were going to have to go in separately. The whole thing was a mess.
What kept you in La Paz?
I was there on accident. One of our trains had taken the overland route to La Paz, probably to pick up some of the armaments we had there. Turns out that train was supposed to head north. So all of a sudden, most of the leadership south of the Rio Grandes in La Paz, which in retrospect probably did us a lot of good as far as the overall effort is concerned.
When did you first hear about the 001 hypothesis entity?
Jesus, is that what they're calling it now? The machine, I guess. We first heard through the grapevine of increased activity in the area in, I guess it would have been a little over a year ago. We ended up in La Paz in October of 42, so yeah, that sounds right. The first concrete evidence we got that something was wrong was when a train of refugees, seems kind of silly to call them that, but I guess that's accurate. They showed up in La Paz near the end of October, talking about how their entire town had been mulched. They didn't really elaborate much, just kept saying, la máquina, you know, the machine. That's why we were calling it that. By the way, we had no idea what it was supposed to be.
What about your first interaction with the entity?
Well, the rail stopped running, if that's what you mean. We got word from the local authorities that there had been an accident up north, and that the trains weren't heading to the border anymore. It wasn't a huge issue for us since we could have taken a couple of vehicles and headed east until we hit one of the little towns at the foot of the mountains. Most of them were hooked up to a separate rail line entirely, and we could have gotten out that way. But the big stuff, the stuff that the train had been sent to La Paz for, couldn't just be moved. So we were going to wait it out. Then DeMarco had the bright idea to set a party up the rail line to see where the holdup was, and see what we could do to clear it. He led the expedition himself.
What happened to Agent DeMarco?
You know damn well what happened to him, Bill.
It's for the record.
Fine. We didn't hear back from him after 3 days, and we're going to send the rest of the leadership east anyway so they didn't have to wait. But then after 5 days, one of DeMarco's guys showed up at our camp. He was delirious, talking about the World Eater, and how the rest of the guys had gotten mulched. And they had, hadn't they? I know it wasn't as big as it ended up, but it wasn't something to fuck around with. DeMarco.
Are you alright?
Yeah, he tried to kill it. He probably knew then what we wouldn't find out until later, that we couldn't contain this thing. There wasn't a hole in the world big enough to put it in, or a box that it wouldn't eat its way out of. But it didn't matter for him, or anyone he went with. The machine didn't care.
When did you first see him?
December. Once we'd hunkered in, I was part of an expeditionary team that flew up there to get a good look at it. It was already, you saw what it did to that side of the country. I'd never seen anything that big that could move. It was like a mountain of moving parts, blackening the skies that burned through whatever it was shoveling into its chest. And it was small then. It was, I don't know. We all had XK event preparation training, but this went above and beyond anything we had trained for. It was an inevitability. We knew that we were going to die, and this thing was going to kill us. It was just a matter of when.
Ending audio file. Addendum 001.06 Collected Foundation Correspondences. Note: the following are excerpts from written correspondences by Foundation personnel stationed at La Paz, recovered from the temporary site in the wake of the 001-hyphothesis event. Names have been omitted for their own protection. Beginning audio file.
Dear, I don't know if this will get to you. None of the trains are running, but our commander says that we can still get letters out. I hope it does. I would like you to read it. The skies down here have been dark for weeks. Smoke from up north every day makes it hard to breathe. They still don't have indoor plumbing here, and nobody but the other guys in our company speak English. We still don't know what we're down here to do either. I keep hearing that we're here to fix the rails, but why aren't we going north? Aren't the brakes in the rails up north? A man came into town today with damn near half of his face cooked off. He was like a dead man. Didn't respond to anybody. He got towards the middle of town and just collapsed. When he finally woke up in the infirmary later, he was delirious, telling a story about a machine the size of a mountain that spoke to you. Said there were people jumping out of their homes and running just to throw themselves in it. Said they were shredded, like jumping under a lawnmower. Then he died, and nobody knows why. The mountains crumbled before our own eyes. We saw a figure rising through the smoke, slow and lumbering but with terrifying momentum. It didn't crawl like a beast or walk like a man, but was propelled forwards by the turning of 1,000,000 cogs. Like an iron centipede, its body extended upwards into the smoke, higher than we could make out. Within its chest we saw fire, like the furnaces of hell. It came to the mountains north of us and did not stop or go around, but went through them and devoured them. It reached out with a long pulsating arm and pulled an entire village into its maw. I saw men leaping to their death as their homes were swept away into the same inferno as the rest. And it howled, not just through the grinding of the gears and the churning of the machine, but in our minds. I could hear it in my heart. and it was screaming.
Ending audio file.
Addendum 001.07. Interview with GOC Lieutenant Revenant. Note: the following is an excerpt from a post-event interview conducted with a GOC lieutenant codenamed Revenant. The recording of the interview and all transcripts thereof were collected by Foundation agents due to a negotiated information exchange in 1992. To date, the identity of Revenant is unknown.
Beginning audio file.
There's a story that gets told among Foundation agents. Something that the grizzled veterans will tell the greenhorns during the long nights of guard duty on some cell block or another. I don't know who started it, but I know they still tell it. It's been half a century, and they still get it right. You can give them that much credit. They say, "Don't you know? The GOC killed God." But the greenhorns will say, "No, that's not true. God's in a cell at site, whatever. GOC didn't kill God." And they're talking about that type green they got locked up somewhere, the one who thinks he's the Christian God. And the vets will smile and shake their heads and won't say anything, because they all know. They know that in 1943, in the midst of the apocalypse, the Foundation could do nothing but watch the end, while the Allied Occult Initiative, a poorly funded, undermanned, inadequate predecessor to the Coalition, saved the world. The metaphorical gun was found on an island off of the coast of Greece. I can't even remember what it looked like. All I get is that sort of fuzzy recollection the amnesiacs leave with you. But I distinctly recall it wasn't as heavy as you'd think. Huh. Why the amnesiacs? I was with the detachment deployed to the area, and apparently one of the pieces had some mind-altering effect to it. I have a vague sense of feeling something wrong, so I'll take their word for it. I don't remember what it looked like. I can't recall how it destroyed that much land. Hell, I barely remember when it happened, and the only reason I know where is all the before and after maps. But I can still feel it in my gut. That wasn't how things were meant to be. We stood before what looked like an angry God, and a vengeful God, and all it did was beg us to kill it. And we were all too happy to oblige.
Ending audio file.
Addendum 001.08. Recovered video transcript. Note: the following is a transcript of recovered video footage, roughly 30 seconds in duration. The transcript of the clip was authored shortly after its recovery, though the video has since degraded and is no longer legible. The footage's audio is in acceptable condition and is available for access down below. I will warn you that the audio is fairly high, so be warned.
Beginning audio file. Ending audio file.
Addendum 001.09 Neutralization of SCP-001. I shall be reading this article file for all of you now. On July 17, 1943, agents from the Allied Occult Initiative contacted Foundation directors stationed at La Paz, Mexico, and requested assistance with transportation towards the site of the 001 hypothesis entity. Foundation operatives moved quickly to dispatch a plane to retrieve the AOI members. After arriving, the agents described a unique anomalous artifact they had in their custody, and how it might be used to slow the advance of the 001 hypothesis entity. 3 days after arriving at La Paz, on July 24, 1943, the Allied Occult Initiative dispatched a single agent to the site of the 001 hypothesis entity, with the anomalous artifact on their person. On the morning of July 25, 1943, as the 001 hypothesis entity approached the shore of the Pacific Ocean, another massive mechanical construct appeared overhead. The origin of this entity is currently unknown. Records of the event following the appearance of SCP-2399 are incomplete and likely inaccurate. The result of this engagement was the annihilation of SCP-001. SCP-2399 disappeared and was later discovered in low Jupiter orbit in a state of disrepair, although the reason for this is currently unknown. The remaining inactive component of SCP-001, a massive unassembled group of machine parts, remains at the bottom of the Gulf of California. Upon removing SCP-882 from the inactive superstructure, the remainder collapsed and became woefully inert. Following the 001 hypothesis event, a massive amnestization of individuals in and around the area now known as Baja California took place. These efforts were aided by the quantity of thick black smoke that accompanied SCP-001, and current historical records describe the event as a forest fire. Significant effort was made to adjust the maps of the area, as well as relocate dispatched civilians. Because of the need for a widespread amnesiac regimen, several experimental neurotransformers were used, and because of their poorly understood side effects, it is estimated that no fewer than 2 million people across the world died in the decade following the 001 hypothesis event. Addendum 001.10 Collected Allied Occult Initiative Documentation. Note: the following document was given to Foundation personnel by POI-004D/001. See Addendum 001.12. It is currently unknown how the document came into POI-004D/001's possession.
Beginning audio file.
Authored by Lieutenant Van Pelt, Commanding Officer Colonel Bagram, report length 57 pages. Summary of the report. On December 30th, 1942, a rogue humanoid entity, anomalous in nature, was sighted by a patrol near a small island off the coast of Greece. This entity, who claimed no name and did not communicate readily in the English tongue, was carrying a small cubit artifact no larger than a baseball. The entity appeared to be feminine and had a number of steel chains extending from its scalp. Entity was originally willing to give up possession of the artifact classified as AR-213, but became hostile shortly thereafter and began speaking. Entity made threats on the lives of the squad and subdued 2 officers before being incapacitated by Sergeant Dixon. Entity made reference to the west of the Mexican country, demanding to be freed so that the artifact could be taken there. Further research has uncovered increased SCP Foundation activity in that area, as well as some minor geological disturbances. On the orders of Colonel Bagram, 2nd Platoon was ordered to ship to the site of the disturbances with the entity, classified EN-340, in tow. After boarding the ship bound for America, EN-340 became passive, albeit obviously uncomfortable and disturbed. Recommending further psychological evaluation of EN-340 upon return prior to termination. Once analysis of AR-213 is completed, artifact will be shipped to Zurich for incineration. Report is attached to your consideration. Sincerely, Lieutenant R. Van Pelt, 2nd Platoon, Allied Occult Initiative Peacekeepers.
Ending audio file.
Addendum 001.11. Agent Ruberson's Statement, January of 1944. Note: Agent Aaron Ruberson was on site during the collection of SCP-001 artifacts. As the most senior member of the Foundation staff assigned to the collection effort, he was required to submit a post-event statement. This report was filed at Site-17 until it was added to the other classified materials related to SCP-001. It is unknown whether any other individuals had knowledge of this report, or if any copies were made. The following is an excerpt from that statement.
Beginning audio file.
Well, we took what we could from the shores first. Little things. Gears and pulleys and pistons and things like that. A lot of it was garbage, but they were still twitching and spinning and turning. They still had life in them. The small stuff sort of died off after a couple hours, but I heard some of the bigger pieces were still churning weeks later. Like cutting the head off a chicken. The important parts, the ones we knew were actual church artifacts, we managed to bag and get moved to the train in La Paz for transport. I counted, maybe 100 individual anomalous artifacts. Some of the boys at the train station joked they'd have to build a whole new site just to keep it all. We kept casualties low, fortunately. Mostly guys just being dumb around machinery, acting like they still couldn't take their arms off. Rodriguez got his hand crunched, and we had to help move him to the local clinic. I think we only had one death the entire time. One of the locals we hired to help dive down through the bay and get straps around the heart so we could pull it up. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. It said they found him with his head smashed between two moving pieces. Said it looked like he shoved it in there himself. But I don't know. I didn't see it. I did see the tags, though. You know, when a place manufactures something, and in order to identify where the part came from, they'll get a big piece of metal with a name on it and stick it to the side of the part? Well, we saw plenty of those on other parts. The stuff they had collected while it was eating its way to the sea. None of the church artifacts did, though. They all, buzzed along like everything else, but they weren't marked. You could feel something when standing next to them, like serenity. The whole project felt like that. It felt calm, like relief. Except for the heart. When we finally got it out of the bay, we had to keep it on the shore for a day because of the weather. Some of the locals started to get itchy. Said they was hearing voices and wouldn't go near it. It didn't matter how much money we offered them. I had to wait to bring in more support from the base up north just to get it loaded on a ship. I don't know. I've seen all kinds of things. But my mimetic resistance is pretty high. I had to pass a handful of tests just to get this assignment. Everything was clean. But I can't deny getting another kind of feeling around the haunt. I don't know if I'd say I was hearing voices, but... Right, the tags. It was as we was leaving and loading it on the ship, I was going to take it north, that I saw them for the first time. I didn't even think to say anything then. It didn't even pass my mind until I started looking at some of the files. And then that ship crashed in the storm, and they lost the haunt. And the whole time, I kept thinking about those goddamn metal tags. I realized it then, I think. That wasn't a church artifact, Johnny. They said, property of the factory.
Ending audio file.
And finally, Addendum 001.12. Interview with POI-004D/001. Note: the following is an excerpt from an interview in 2009 with POI-004D/001, who claims to be part of a previously unknown sect of the Church of the Broken God. Contact was made with cooperation of the Unusual Incidents Unit, who had interacted with POI-004D/001, as detailed in Addendum 001.01.
Beginning audio file.
So, Tell me, what do you think you know? Interesting. Well, you're not entirely wrong, and that's commendable. In this day and age, there are a few key details I feel you may be overlooking, and you may be overvaluing information handed to you by a self-admitted amnesiac. Let me set the record straight. The GOC did not kill Yahweh, as they may so proudly proclaim, and that was not the broken god they destroyed. It was a piece of it. Surely. But would you show me a camshaft and call it a car? Oh. So you have some parts together. An engine, perhaps, but not a car. God is much simpler than that. God is everything, from the biggest star to the smallest particle, each tiny parts, completely insignificant on their own. Do whatever it is they're meant to do, meshing together, gnawing at each other, all a part of the cosmic machine. The machine aspect was, at some point, likely simply a metaphor, an idea. But as I'm sure you know, ideas are powerful. They make things from nothing, or change things already there, and with a small spark of the divine, a symbol becomes real. Have a planet which has much life as there is here, and you generate a lot of ideas. And you may ask me, why is it called the Broken God? There are a few possible answers. Something as simple as translation issues, reinterpretations made physical by the devout. Is broken simply a poor translation of some more nuanced word? Was God a being that was broken in the Big Bang? If so, why did it break? And what will happen if it's repaired? I can answer none of these questions, save the last, but you already know the answer. Whatever God once was doesn't matter, ultimately. What matters to you is that it must remain as it is, broken. God knows that. The more powerful parts, the mechanical components, the more conventional sects may label as holy. They know they are not meant to be one solid thing, and even when forced together, a foreign force driving them, they know what they really are. Bits of the monster will work to destroy itself, deploy smaller entities to do the job. The GOC didn't kill it. They took the gun from its own hand and claimed credit when they pulled the trigger. The problem is that humans are too small a part of God to remember. Remember what it was like before. And so those like Bumaro will invent new ways to push us towards a singularity. Because that's what will happen. Did you see the underside of the destroyer? It was damaged even before the encounter in 43. And if you looked very closely, you might have seen the scars were getting closer and closer to the power core. It even managed to damage whatever lets it slip between the layers of reality this time. Eventually the monster will win. It will destroy the destroyer, devour it, and with its power consume everything. And I mean everything. God will return to being one Gestalt being, a singularity, and then break. Only this time, it may have some outside force within it. The rust of the factory, the blood of the Divite King, the Fiftists, Wundertainment, some random person on the street with enough spark in them to be a reality bender. They will have a hand in remaking the universe, and close the secondary loop of all of this. No, that doesn't concern me. It's an eventuality. It's meant to happen. Who's to say it hasn't already happened, and your people were the winner? Maybe humanity itself was the winner. But that doesn't mean I'd be against putting it off, allowing the primary loop to continue. Yes, it's possible. I know you couldn't damage the monster last time, and that the destroyer may not be able to repair itself by the time it is needed. But who's to say you can't aid it, or mimic those who will seek to rebuild God and acquire outside help? Working together, Nothing is impossible. Apart, we are broken, but united, we are God.
Deselecting addendum files.
Well, there you have it, sir. I hope that you and the rest of my colleagues here will appreciate the hard work that I have taken out of my time in order to educate you all on any updated needs and measures of SCP-001. Once again, it is important that we make sure that this information does not easily get leaked out to our other staff members, and that the present status quo of ignorance compared to other SCP-001 files be kept. I believe that you, sir, as well as my other colleagues will agree that we do not need any more information breaches, especially on this SCP.